The boy should have died. I mean, that's the secret. That's the absolute core of the story we're diving into today.
It is.
We're talking about a paradox that really kicks off an entire universe. You have this baby marked for death who survives the most feared curse in existence.
Right.
But, and this is the kicker, right at the start, he doesn't survive because he's strong or because he has some secret superpower. He survives because someone loved him enough to stand in front of the darkness.
And that creates this fascinating subversion right from the very first page. Usually in these epic stories, the hero survives because they're special. They have the bloodline, the prophecy, the strength. Here, the hero survives and then becomes special because of that survival.
Yeah.
It's a crucial distinction that sets the tone for everything that comes after.
Exactly. And today we are unpacking a source that I found just incredibly moving. It's titled The Boy Who Lived, A Myth of Love and Sacrifice. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. You're thinking, I know this story. I know the wands, the brooms, the houses, the candy. But this source isn't a recap. It's making an argument that this story is doing something much, much heavier than just, entertaining us with magic tricks.
It really is. The source frames the entire narrative, not as a simple adventure story, but as a piece of modern folklore. It looks at how the story uses these very old, almost ancient mythic concepts to talk about worth, about how evil fractures a soul, and ultimately about the terrible cost of love.
That's what really grabbed me, that idea that love costs.
Right.
We tend to think of love in fairy tales as this, gentle, healing thing. A kiss wakes the princess. But this source comes out swinging. It says that love here, it's not soft. It's a shield, yes, but it's a shield that takes damage.
Love creates scars. That's the whole thesis. And if we're talking about scars, we absolutely have to start with the origin story.
It's a lightning bolt.
The source focuses so heavily on that lightning-shaped wound. It's become such a massive pop culture icon, almost like a corporate logo, that we forget what it actually represents in the text.
It's so easy to just gloss over it, but the source describes it not just as a physical mark, but as a fracture in evil.
Wow.
It's the physical proof that the natural order of things where the strong kill the weak was just broken by a single act.
That is a powerful image. It suggests the scar isn't a souvenir of a battle. It's a violation of the rules of that dark magic.
Yeah.
But what I find most compelling in the source is the immediate contrast it draws. You have this huge event, this fracture in evil, and then you cut to the boy's actual life.
Oh, it's brutal.
You have Harry, who is a legend to an entire secret society. They're literally raising glasses to him in secret pubs.
And meanwhile, in his reality, he's completely invisible. The source puts it so bleakly. He lives in cupboards and silence. He's taught to expect nothing and to ask for less. It made me wonder, why does the source put so much weight on that specific beginning? Why not just raise him as a prince in a castle?
Because if he's a prince, the story fails. It completely fails. Think about the psychology of it. If Harry had known he was special from day one, if he'd been raised as a celebrity, that power just becomes an entitlement. The source argues his journey isn't really about discovering power. It's not about learning to levitate feathers or brew potions.
It's about discovering worth.
Yes. That's the huge aha moment. He starts from a place of total neglect. So when the magic finally arrives, it's not just cool. It's a lifeline.
The source says it makes everything that follows burn brighter.
It has to. And think about how the truth arrives. It's not some gentle explanation over tea.
No, the letters just flood the house.
It's an unstoppable intrusion of truth into a world that was built on lies. But even then, the source points out that this revelation, it's a double-edged sword.
Right, because suddenly he inherits this title, The Boy Who Lived. It sounds so proud, but the source points out that it must feel incredibly heavy. It says, legends have already decided who he is supposed to be, and none of them ask what he wants.
And that's the tragedy of the whole chosen one archetype, isn't it? His identity is constructed by strangers before he's even had a chance to figure himself out. He walks into this world, and he's already a statue in people's minds. He has to navigate a world that has projected all its hopes and all its fears right onto him.
Speaking of entering that world, let's talk about the atmosphere the source describes. Because it isn't just a fun magic world. The source describes it as feeling ancient.
Yes, stitched together from human fears and folklore.
It's a texture thing, right? The magic here isn't scientific. It's not like some modern fantasy systems with mana points and rules of physics.
Not at all. Here, magic is linguistic. The source notes that spells are just spoken words. which echoes medieval charms and curses.
And the creatures, too. They're not new inventions.
No, they're echoes of old myths. Dragons that hoard gold, serpents that whisper lies. These are archetypes that had existed in our consciousness for thousands of years. The source argues this is what grounds the fantasy.
It feels lived in.
Exactly. It feels like remembering something rather than learning something new.
I really loved the source's description of the school itself. It calls Hogwarts a living memory.
That is a beautiful phrase.
It fits so perfectly. You have staircases that move, portraits that watch you. The source says this is a constant reminder that the past never truly sleeps.
Right.
In this world, history isn't something you just read in a textbook. It's literally walking around the hallways or shouting at you from a picture frame.
You're constantly interacting with the dead. The past is an active participant in the present, which is the perfect transition to the force that's trying to destroy all that history. The villain, Voldemort.
His source analyzes him in a way that I found really gripping. It doesn't just call him the bad guy. It frames him through the lens of folklore and this idea of refusal.
This is where we get into the psychology of evil in this story. The source explains that Voldemort is shaped by the oldest fear of all, death. But it's his response to it that makes him a monster. His entire method, splitting his soul, hiding it in objects, it's all an attempt to cheat the natural order. In folklore, monsters are so often born from refusal. Refusal to age, refusal to love, refusal to let go.
So by refusing to die, he's actually, destroying himself?
He becomes less human. That's the trade-off. The source explicitly states that every time he reaches for immortality, he loses another piece of his humanity. He creates a deficit in his own soul. He becomes a construct of fear instead of a person.
And then you have Harry, who is the complete opposite.
Exactly. While Voldemort is isolating himself to survive, Harry is becoming more human through connection.
This is my favorite part of the analysis, the idea of community as a shield. The source is pretty blunt here. It says Harry is not the smartest wizard in the room.
He's really not, and that's so important.
It is. I mean, he's great on a broom and he's brave, but he's not the one solving the logic puzzles or knowing the obscure history.
And the source argues that is the entire point. If he were some singular genius who could do it all, he wouldn't need anyone.
Right.
But because he has gaps, he has to rely on Hermione's knowledge, on Ron's faith and cultural understanding, on the bravery of the teachers and parents around him.
It echoes those old legends where the hero doesn't succeed by being the singular, unstoppable force.
No.
They succeed by being woven into a community.
Voldemort thinks power is standing alone on top of a pile of bodies. The source argues true strength is the web of people who stand in front of you. It's reciprocal. Harry stands for them, and they stand for him.
Which goes right back to the intro. Someone stood in front of the darkness for him when he was a baby, and he spends the rest of the story letting others stand with him. But we can't talk about Harry without talking about the physical manifestation of his history, the scar.
Yeah, the lightning bolt, the brand.
But the source urges us to move beyond it just being a logo. In folklore, a scar is proof. It's proof that someone has crossed the line between innocence and experience. You don't get a scar like that without losing something.
And the source mentions that Harry carries his trauma so openly, it aches. It flares up.
Yeah.
It's a constant reminder that evil leaves traces. It's not like he defeated the bad guy as a baby and just walked away clean. The trauma literally lives in his skin.
And that leads to the question of agency, right? The source highlights that despite the pain, despite the anger, which would be a very easy, very valid response to his life, Harry chooses kindness. He chooses mercy, even when revenge feels deserved.
That is the sophisticated choice. It's easy to be kind when you are safe. It is incredibly difficult to be kind when you're being hunted.
Yeah, so his heroism isn't in his spellcasting.
No, it's in his restraint.
As the story goes on, the source notes a shift. It says the story darkens. Childhood just, it falls away.
This is the shift to realism. Death stops being a rumor or a backstory, and it becomes a real presence. Friends are lost. But what I find most insightful in the source material is its critique of the magical society itself during this time.
Oh, absolutely. The dangerous comfort of denial.
Yes. The source points out that the magical world shows its cracks. It's full of prejudice, fear, bureaucracy. When the threat returns, what do the institutions do?
They deny it. They bury their heads in the sand. They smear the boy who is trying to warn them.
Because the truth is terrifying. And wizards hide instead of helping. Institutions fail. The source argues this teaches the listener that evil thrives through silence.
It's not just the villain casting the spells.
No, it's the good people who look the other way because they're afraid to lose their comfort.
That feels so real. It really grounds the fantasy. It's not just good wizards versus bad wizards. It's about a society trying to pretend everything is fine while the house is on fire.
Which forces the hero to step outside the law, outside the school, outside the safety net. If the adults won't fix it, the children have to. Which leads us to the climax, the forest.
The willing sacrifice. The source describes this scene so vividly. Harry walks into the forest, and he knows he may not come back.
And this is the oldest story there is. The source frames it as the hero who accepts death to strip evil of its power. But look at the mechanics of it. Does Harry go in there, guns blazing?
No.
Does he have some master plan to duel Voldemort?
Not at all. He doesn't raise his wand. He doesn't fight.
He simply goes. The source says he carries love like a quiet weapon. It is a total subversion of the typical action hero finale.
Right. We want to see the hero punch the villain into the sun. We want that display of dominance.
And here, the hero wins by surrendering.
By surrendering to death, but not to evil. There is a difference.
A huge difference. By accepting his own mortality, the one thing Voldemort cannot do, the one thing that drives Voldemort's entire existence, Harry breaks the cycle. He proves that there are things worse than death and things stronger than hate.
It's almost a pacifist victory in the middle of a war.
In that moment, yes. He disarms the villain by making the villain's greatest weapon irrelevant. You can't threaten a man with death if he has already walked willingly toward it.
And when the dust finally settles, the source calls the victory fragile. I thought that was such an interesting word choice. Not glorious. Fragile.
Because it is. Look at the aftermath. The survivors mourn. The world rebuilds slowly. There is no magic spell that fixes the grief or brings back the dead. The source emphasizes that there is no perfect ending where everything just goes back to the way it was.
So what's the victory then, if it's not perfect?
The victory is simply the chance to live without fear ruling every choice. That's it. That's the prize. Just the opportunity to exist.
And Harry's fate. The source says he doesn't become a king. He doesn't become a god.
He becomes something much rarer. He becomes a person allowed to grow up.
That hits hard. Because for 7 years, really since he was a baby, he wasn't allowed to just be a person. He was a symbol. He was a target.
He was a weapon. And the ultimate reward for the boy who lived is just living, being mundane, having the luxury of a quiet life where no one is trying to kill him before final exams. It's a very humble definition of a happy ending.
This whole deep dive has really changed how I look at this story. It's so easy to get caught up in the merchandise and the movies, but when you strip it back to these themes, worth, community, the cost of love, it is incredibly heavy.
It is. The source synthesizes the truth of the story beautifully. It says the power of the story isn't that magic exists. I mean, we all know magic doesn't exist in our world.
Right.
The power lies in the question, what do we do with power?
Do we hoard it? Or do we share it?
Do we let it divide our souls, or do we use it to protect others? Do we hide from our mortality, or do we accept it so we can actually live? That is the question that transcends the whole genre.
And that brings us to the end of our journey through this myth. It's a story about a boy in a cupboard who saves the world not by conquering it, but by bleeding for it.
And by letting others love him.
So we want to leave you with one final thought from the source. It's a bit unsettling, but I think it's necessary. The source reminds us, love is not soft. It scars. It costs.
And sometimes it is the only thing that survives when everything else falls apart.
So ask yourself, what scars are you carrying? And are they proof of pain, or are they proof that you too have survived because of love? Thanks for listening to this deep dive.